A year ago, two of YouTube's biggest egos convinced millions of kids that drinking neon-colored sugar water made you part of an elite club. Logan Paul and KSI didn't just launch a drink, they launched a cult of hype. Stores were raided, bottles resold for $50. And for a brief moment, Prime was the new Rolex, except it came in plastic. But hype burns fast. Today, those same bottles sit untouched on clearance shelves. Profits have crashed over 90%, lawsuits are stacking, and the billion-dollar dream has turned into a corporate panic attack. Because Prime's collapse isn't about taste or caffeine, it's about deception, about how two influencers built an empire on manufactured scarcity, fake purity, and a borrowed formula, and how it's all finally catching up to them. This is the story of how hype built a billion-dollar illusion, and how it all came crashing down the second the cameras stopped rolling. When Prime first hit shelves, it wasn't just a drink, it was chaos. Fights broke out in grocery aisles. Parents were driving across towns to find a single bottle. Kids were trading them at school like rare Pokemon cards. But here's the twist. Prime was never actually rare. The sold-out everywhere phenomenon wasn't an accident. It was the strategy. Logan Paul and KSI had learned one brutal truth about Gen Z. If something feels exclusive, it becomes valuable, even if it's garbage. So, they engineered scarcity on purpose. They timed restocks with new vlog drops, teased limited flavors that never stayed on shelves, and leaked fake rumors that Prime was sold out for months when warehouses were still full. The result? A frenzy built on loss aversion, the fear of missing out. Every restock alert triggered panic. Every limited edition color turned into a social currency. Kids weren't buying hydration, they were buying belonging. Owning Prime meant you were in on the trend, not outside looking in. And it worked flawlessly at first. Supermarkets were mobbed. Prime became the official drink of Arsenal FC and the UFC. Even major news outlets were covering it like it was a cultural event, not a sports drink. But there's a dangerous flaw in fake scarcity. Once people realize it's fake, the illusion dies instantly. Prime's empire wasn't built on taste or trust. It was built on manufactured urgency, a psychological trick that made hype look like demand. The same trick that made them billionaires is now the reason those bottles are collecting dust. Because once you've tricked millions into chasing a status symbol, the moment they actually taste it, the illusion starts to crack. Prime wasn't just a drink, it was a social badge. Kids weren't buying hydration, they were buying status. Flashing a bottle at school was like showing off designer sneakers. For a while, that illusion worked perfectly, but the moment they cracked open the cap and took a sip, reality hit hard. Prime's biggest secret wasn't its hype, it was its taste. Once the initial rush faded, people realized it didn't even taste good. Reviews outside the fan bubble were brutal. Many called it chemical water, cough syrup, or fake Gatorade. One UK journalist said the tropical punch flavor was, frankly, awful, like drinking perfume. Even the kids, Prime's biggest defenders, started admitting it wasn't that great. Some literally refilled empty bottles with tap water just to keep up the look. It turns out there was nothing revolutionary about Prime's formula. It was just 10% coconut water mixed with electrolytes, basically a repackaged version of existing sports drinks, not an innovation. And that cheap trick backfired fast. Once people realized it was all branding and no substance, repeat sales collapsed. Reports showed that almost 9 out of 10 buyers never purchased Prime again after their first try. The identity that made Prime popular, flashy, loud, influencer-backed, quickly became toxic. Logan Paul's reputation as a scammer and KSI's polarizing persona turned off parents and even fans. As the hype faded, being seen with Prime started to look embarrassing. It wasn't a flex anymore, it was cringe. The same kids who once lined up at dawn to grab a bottle were now mocking it online. Prime didn't just lose sales, it lost status. Once the taste failed and the hype wore off, the so-called hydration revolution turned into a collective never again. But instead of learning from their mistakes, Logan and KSI made it worse. They decided to hit the gas, literally, by launching a drink so dangerous it got banned in schools.
In conclusion, both amazing tasting, better for you products. Drink Prime.
Just when Prime's hype started to fade, Logan Paul and KSI made the worst decision possible. They tried to turn it up a notch. In early 2023, they launched Prime Energy, a new version of their drink that looked exactly like the hydration line. except this one was loaded with a staggering 200 milligrams of caffeine per can. That's more than 2 Red Bulls or nearly 6 cans of Coke, and they marketed it with the same bright colors, cartoon vibes, and influencer swagger that had kids hooked on the original. To a parent, it looked harmless. To a kid, it looked fun. But to regulators, it looked like a lawsuit waiting to happen. The confusion was instant and dangerous. Children who thought they were drinking a regular sports drink were actually downing a caffeine bomb. Schools began reporting headaches, jitters, and even panic attacks in students who had chugged Prime Energy during class. Soon, districts across the US and UK started banning all versions of Prime, hydration, and energy because teachers couldn't tell them apart. Parents flooded Facebook and Reddit with warnings, sharing stories of their kids staying up all night after just 1 can. And then came the political hammer. US Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer publicly called out Prime, labeling it a cauldron of caffeine disguised as a sports drink for children. He urged the FDA to investigate Prime's marketing, warning that the nearly identical packaging between the 2 drinks made it deceptive and dangerous. The story exploded across mainstream media. Prime wasn't a trendy drink anymore. It was a public health scandal. Logan Paul tried to do damage control. He posted defensive videos claiming it's for adults, not kids. But that excuse fell flat because the branding was never meant for adults. It was made to catch a child's eye on a supermarket shelf. And once your product gets banned in schools and investigated by the government, your cool brand officially becomes a problem brand. Prime Energy didn't supercharge the company, it detonated it. Instead of fueling growth, it fueled outrage, bans, and lawsuits. The founders had accidentally proven the one rule every shady marketer forgets. If you sell danger disguised as fun, eventually someone calls you out. But caffeine wasn't the only thing poisoning Prime's reputation. Because soon, people discovered that Prime's toxins weren't just metaphorical, they were chemical. Just when it seemed like Prime couldn't sink any lower, the headlines got darker. This time, it wasn't about caffeine, hype, or bad taste. It was about toxins. In mid-2023, independent lab tests allegedly discovered something inside Prime Hydration's grape flavor that no one expected in a healthy sports drink, PFAS, better known as forever chemicals. These aren't just buzzwords. PFAS are synthetic compounds used in non-stick pans and firefighting foams. They don't break down in the human body. They build up over time, linked to cancer, fertility issues, and immune disorders. And they were allegedly found in a drink sold to kids as clean, pure hydration. The discovery triggered a class action lawsuit that changed the entire narrative around Prime. Lawyers accused Logan Paul and KSI's company of false advertising, claiming they bragged about 0 toxins while selling a product tainted with chemicals that never leave your body. The lawsuit alleged Prime's marketing was not just misleading, it was dangerous. One part of the complaint hit especially hard. It quoted Logan Paul's own words about Prime being the future of healthy hydration and used them against him in court. Suddenly, the same influencer confidence that once sold millions of bottles became evidence of deception. News outlets started calling Prime toxic juice. Parents began throwing bottles away. Reddit threads were filled with people saying, "I can't believe I gave this to my kids." And while the company denied everything, the damage was already done. Even if Prime somehow proved innocent, the association with forever chemicals was like a permanent stain. Because once people think your product is poisoning them, they don't come back. Not for an apology, not for a discount, not ever. This was the point where Prime's downfall stopped being financial and became moral. It wasn't just a bad product anymore. It was a brand accused of lying to families and putting profit over safety. The lawsuits, the investigations, and the outrage cemented what many already suspected. Prime wasn't a hydration brand. It was a hype scam that finally ran out of luck. But as the public turned against them, an even bigger hit was coming, not from customers, not from politicians, but from their own business partners. By late 2023, Prime's image was destroyed. But what came next hit where it hurts most: the bank account. Behind the scenes, Prime had built its billion-dollar empire on massive supply deals that depended on the hype never slowing down. The moment sales collapsed, those deals turned into landmines. And one of them, with their biggest bottling partner, Refresco, blew up in their face. Refresco isn't some small-time factory. It's one of the largest beverage manufacturers in the world, producing for brands like Pepsi and Gatorade. When Logan Paul and KSI's team pitched Prime, Refresco bet big, building entire production lines and custom bottle molds just for them. Under the contract, Prime was supposed to purchase over 55 million cases of product over 3 years, or pay penalties if they didn't. But when Prime's sales nosedived, the company allegedly backed out of the deal, leaving Refresco with idle factories, wasted materials, and millions in losses. So in August 2024, Refresco filed a $67.7 million lawsuit against Prime's parent company, Congo Brands, accusing them of breach of contract and bad faith. The lawsuit claimed Prime's team had repudiated their agreement after overestimating demand, walking away from the obligations that Refresco had already invested millions to meet. It was a stunning reversal. The same partners who once celebrated Prime's explosive growth were now suing to recover losses caused by its collapse. Refresco even cited Prime's falling social buzz and sharp year-over-year sales decline as evidence that the brand's viral model was unsustainable. In simple terms, Prime's entire supply chain had been built on hype, and now that hype had evaporated. The Refresco lawsuit was the kill shot. It wasn't YouTube drama anymore, it was corporate betrayal on a multi-million-dollar scale. When your own supplier sues you for nearly $70 million, you're not a trending brand, you're a failed business case study. Prime's founders had spent years convincing the world they were business geniuses, masterminds of a billion-dollar brand. But this lawsuit exposed the truth. They weren't running a company. They were running a house of cards held together by influencer clout. And while the lawsuits piled up, one final mistake ensured that Prime's fall would be permanent, a mistake that no marketing stunt could ever fix. Even without lawsuits or scandals, Prime was destined to fail because its entire business strategy broke one of the golden laws of marketing. The law of category says, if you can't be first in a category, create a new one. Red Bull didn't try to beat Coca-Cola, it created energy drinks. Body Armor didn't fight Gatorade head-on, it positioned itself as the natural sports drink. But Prime? Prime walked straight into the lion's den. Instead of defining a new space, Prime tried to compete directly with Gatorade, Powerade, and hundreds of other established brands that had already perfected the formula, the distribution, and the trust. Its only unique selling point was celebrity hype. Logan Paul and KSI thought their influence alone could overpower decades of credibility, but influence doesn't scale like infrastructure does. The moment the novelty wore off, Prime had nothing left to stand on. It wasn't healthier, it wasn't cheaper, it didn't even taste better. The drink existed entirely as a status symbol, and once that status flipped from cool to cringe, it had no category to retreat into, because it never truly owned one to begin with. And this wasn't just a branding error, it was a strategic suicide. The celebrity brand model works only when your audience sees you as aspirational. But Logan Paul wasn't an icon of excellence, he was a cautionary tale of arrogance. So instead of elevating Prime, his image contaminated it. The more his controversies resurfaced, from the Crypto Zoo scandal to public feuds, the more consumers saw Prime as part of that same fake cash grab universe. Even retailers picked up on the decline. By 2024, stores stopped displaying Prime in premium spots. It was quietly pushed to the bottom shelves, right next to discounted clearance items. A perfect metaphor for what happens when hype replaces vision. Prime's fall wasn't just a product failure, it was a marketing masterclass in what not to do. By ignoring the law of category, they built their brand on noise instead of value, on fame instead of foundation. In the end, Prime became proof that hype signals weakness, not strength. Because when the hype fades, all that's left is what the product truly is, and Prime was nothing more than flavored water wearing a celebrity mask. And when that mask finally slipped, the numbers told the story better than anyone could. The hard data behind Prime's complete financial collapse. By 2024, the writing was on the wall. The hype had evaporated, the lawsuits piled high, and the fans had moved on. But even after all the chaos, the bans, the lawsuits, the lies, one question remained. How bad was Prime's downfall really? Because when you peel away the influencer drama and the online memes, the numbers tell a story that's hard to believe. In 2023, Prime was bragging about billion-dollar valuations and record-breaking sales. Fast forward a single year, and the empire had collapsed. In the UK, Prime's revenue plunged 70%, from £112 million to just £33 million, and profits crashed over 91%. falling to barely £312,000. In the US, it wasn't any better. Sales dropped more than 40%, while competitors like Gatorade and Body Armor kept growing. The drink that once sparked riots in grocery stores was now sitting untouched in clearance bins, spotted for as little as 31 pence in Tesco and 40 cents in Dollar Tree. The brand that once symbolized status had become a meme, a sad relic of influencer greed. Reddit threads mocked it as the new Fire Festival of beverages. TikToks went viral of kids using Prime bottles as water flasks, not for hydration, but irony. Meanwhile, the business side looked even uglier. Prime's parent company, Congo Brands, faced more than $90 million in combined legal claims from angry suppliers, lawsuits over toxic ingredients, and caffeine mislabeling allegations. And to make things worse, the company announced a strategic review, corporate language for "we're bleeding money and have no idea what to do next." The billion-dollar dream had officially turned into a slow-motion car crash. Prime didn't collapse because of one bad product, or one lawsuit, or even one scandal. It collapsed because it was never real to begin with. It was built on manipulation, scarcity faked as success, hype sold as value, and charisma mistaken for credibility. And when the illusion cracked, there was nothing underneath. The kids who once lined up outside stores, they grew up and realized they'd been sold lies. The parents who once tolerated it, they saw through the act. The influencers who built it, they moved on to the next million-dollar idea, leaving behind a trail of lawsuits and clearance shelves. Prime's story is the perfect circle of modern influencer culture. Build hype, sell lies, cash out, get exposed. And in the end, the downfall wasn't just satisfying, it was inevitable. Because when you build a billion-dollar empire on deception, the truth always cashes the final check.